Imagine waking up to your daughter's bed empty, day after day, only to be told by the world, just wait for her to come home. When she disappeared, the prevailing assumption was that she simply ran away. Meanwhile, in the woods of Forest Park, Georgia, a discarded mattress sat rotting in the damp brush. It appeared to be nothing more than an illegal dumping, but for months, that mattress held a secret that would eventually shatter a community, for beneath it lied a dark reality. And although the crime was committed in the heat of night, the case would grow cold. It's a tale as old as time, one where gut feelings were superseded by what's considered normal. This is the account of a girl who was ignored in life, but from beyond the grave, her voice became a roar, proving that even when a witness is silenced, the truth can't always be buried. This is the story of Candace Parchment. June 11th, 1994. The world would make way for Candace Parchment. She would be born to her mother, Kathy and Hyatt, in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, where in her early years she would have her upbringing. Outside of her father being her biological father, there isn't much known, and there isn't much said either. I can tell you that Candace was one of two sisters, where she was the younger sibling, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out with the father. When Candace was around 12 years old, her and her mother would make a transition. They would move from Jamaica to America. The place that they would land would be the great state of Georgia, where their first stop would be the city of LaGrange. Candace would attend Long Cane Middle School before moving on to LaGrange High School. But in the year of 2010, another change was yet to come. Her and her mother would make a final transition to Forest Park, Georgia. While in Clayton County, she would attend Forest Park High School, where she was known to be a good student. She excelled at math. She even tutored those in need. Candace is described as a good person, someone with a good soul, someone who wore a permanent smile and was nice to everyone. If you ask the people who knew her, they would tell you that she was soft-spoken. But although she had a timid demeanor, she was no pushover. She was a person who stood her ground. Candace enjoyed music, poetry. She even enjoyed being a writer. But although at any given time, you could catch her scribbling in her notebook, she had one major love: fashion. Even at a young age, she had her entire life planned out. She wanted to be a famous fashion designer. To Candace, appearance was everything. So much so that she would lay out an entire week's worth of clothing just to make sure things were right. If you asked everyone who knew her, no one could think of a bad thing to say about her. She was great. But if you ask her mother, she would say that she had one big flaw. Having a big heart, Candace was very trusting, a little bit too trusting, even naive at times. Candace was one of those people who believed everyone was her friend, and she never met a bad soul. Sadly, this trait would soon become her downfall, and while Candace was a person who believed in second chances, she would never receive one. April 28th, 2010. It was a normal day in the household. Both Candace and her mother would get up. Candace would prepare herself for school, while her mother would head off to work. When her mother gets off work and returns home, Candace is nowhere in sight. So she attempts to reach her on her cell phone, to no avail. For the next few hours, she would continue to call Candace, but with each call going unanswered, the mother would begin to get more worried, and after 6 hours, she'd had enough. She would contact the authorities to escalate the situation. The police would show up to take the report, but when they did, it didn't seem like there was any urgency. Due to Candace being a 15-year-old girl, her mother would receive the same runaround. They would explain that Candace is most likely a runaway and she'll turn up soon. So the mother tries to explain to them, this isn't Candace. She's a good child. She isn't rebellious at all, and she isn't a runaway. Despite her mother's statement, they would take a report and drive off. That was it. I can't even find in the report where they actually did a search. April 28th of 2010 would greet the morning of April 29th, and by then, there was still no sign of her. By now, her mother is extremely worried. She doesn't know what's going on, but then she receives a glimmer of hope. Around 3 p.m., she would receive a text from Candace's phone. The text simply reads that she was in Tennessee. Her mother replies, but she gets no answer. The day after that, she receives another text message. In this message, it appears to be Candace saying, "I'm okay." And just like before, Communication would be cut. Her mother would try calling and texting, but it would be answered with complete silence. And by now, she's thinking something is off. Something is wrong. But for now, she can only wait on law enforcement. And aside from them, she can wait on time. Time to reveal all. 15-year-old Candace Parchment has now been missing for days, and those days will turn into weeks. During this time, there are no more text messages being sent, no form of contact. In fact, her phone is now going to voicemail. You would think that a 15-year-old girl being missing was an immediate alarm, especially if she's been missing for weeks. But for law enforcement, they were still treating this situation as a runaway. There were no searches being conducted and no doors being knocked on. It was as if Candace simply didn't exist. After enough pressure was applied by her mother, on June 2nd of 2010, they would finally decide to subpoena her phone records. And let me be clear, this is exactly 1 month after her mother received those text messages. The authorities filed the paperwork. They send it off, but then they circle back around and say they didn't get a response, and they didn't try to follow up either. Just like the month of May, June would come and go, and with each day passing, her mother becomes more frantic. Although a substantial amount of time has passed, the authorities are still holding on to the theory that she ran away, and the town wasn't exactly helping. Her classmates even began to spread rumors that she ran off with a trucker. Summer would come to a close, and then August. A child who was normally overexcited, picking out her clothes for school, was now the subject of a missing persons investigation. Kind of, because she was only missing at this point to her mother. Time would continue to elapse, and before you know it, the holiday season is here. All Hallows Eve would come and pass, and then November. And we all know what that month is about. It's a month of reflection. It's a month about family and being thankful. In the year of 2010, Thanksgiving was set to be on November 25th, but one day prior, a discovery would be made. On November 24th of 2010, two scavengers would be walking through a wooded area. They were your average guys looking for scraps, metal, or anything valuable. The area that they were searching on this day was just off Sylvia Drive, located in Forest Park. As they rummaged through the woods in search of anything with monetary value, they would come across a mattress. One of the guys then decide to lift it up, and when they do, they find a set of bones. They would immediately back out and contact the authorities, so they arrive on the scene. For the homicide detective, there was a reaction. He was scared, because this was his first case, and if that wasn't hard enough, they didn't find much evidence either. There was the victim, and there was clothing. There was a t-shirt that simply read, "Stay Fresh," accompanied by a jacket, but besides that, nothing. There was no personal belongings, no ID, and no cell phone either. In the beginning of the investigation, the victim was simply named a Jane Doe. That is, until the remains were identified. It wouldn't take long before they ran across the case of Candace Parchment, the 15-year-old girl who simply vanished. To make matters worse, the victim was found a short distance away from where Candace lived. At that point, the authorities were almost certain that was Candace, but they had to be sure. They took the clothing that they found to her mother, and her mother would immediately identify the objects. She would confirm that the clothes did in fact belong to Candace. Her mother's worst nightmare has now came to pass. Candace wasn't missing, and due to the state of the remains, she had most likely lied in that spot since the day she disappeared. An autopsy would reveal a COD. They would come to find that she passed due to a wound dealt from a knife, a wound that was sustained to the chest region. It is no longer a question on whether or not Candace is a runaway. It was clear Candace was deceased. The only question now is how and why. Who would want to harm the girl that everyone spoke so highly of? After the discovery, friends and family were interviewed, but no one could think of a possible suspect. As her mother would prepare for a private funeral, the detectives were hard at work, and they had their work cut out for them. With no real physical evidence and no real suspects, they were chasing a ghost. But in due time, that ghost would reveal themselves. But it wouldn't be because of the work of law enforcement. It would be Candace herself who caught them. It would be her own words who brought the culprits to justice. April 18th, 2011. It has now been months since the discovery of Candace. There's no new information on the case, no breaks, no leads. What happened to Candace is a mystery. For her mother, the home that they shared is now a prison. At every turn of a hallway or an entry into a room, there's something there to remind her of her daughter, whether it be a picture or a stain she may have left on the floor, or maybe one of those many accomplishments that were posted on the refrigerator. For Caffeine, time has essentially stood still, but around this date, she decided that it was time to go, so she began to pack up the home. She would go from her bedroom to the kitchen to the living room, but she would save Candace's room for last. Her room was the hardest. In fact, she had left Candace's room the exact same way she left it the day she disappeared. Nothing had changed. While going through her daughter's things, she would find a hidden diary. With her daughter being passed on, she felt that reading the diary would bring her closer to her. So she opens it up and she begins to go through the pages. She then reaches a diary entry dated January 5th of 2010.
Dear diary, it is me again. My day was awful.
In this entry, Candace explains how two boys led her to an abandoned home. While in this abandoned home, they got physical with her. They even tried to violate her. And it almost happened. That is until they looked up and saw that there were headlights shining through the windows of the abandoned home. Out of fear, the two boys would let her go. But before releasing her, they would make her promise to never say who they were and never tell what happened. It turns out that the headlights that were shining through the windows of the abandoned home belonged to her mother. When Candace didn't come home on that evening, her mother decided to go out and look for her. While passing the abandoned home, she thought she saw someone inside, so she drives into the driveway. When Candace realizes this, she's elated. She knows now she's safe. She gets inside of the vehicle, and she then explains to her mother what happened, but in the same breath, she tells her mother never to tell anyone. Her mother would beg her to go to the authorities, tell them what happened, but Candace declined. Her mother even questioned her about what their names were, but in that moment, Candace says she didn't know. She simply wanted to move on with her life and pretend it never happened. But now, after a long period of time of being in the dark, the mother was staring directly at their names. Their names were Marche Hickman and Jermaine Robinson. Kathy and Hyatt would waste no time. She would immediately rush to the police station and let them know about her findings. The police then searched their database and come to find out Marche Hickman was already in jail on unrelated charges. He's then taken out of his cell and transported to headquarters for further questioning. Upon being questioned, he wouldn't deny the fact that yes, he knew Candace, but he denied any involvement in what happened to her. He says that him and a group of guys were playing basketball on that evening. As normal, Candace would cut behind their apartments and walk through a trail. He says that behind Candace was a mysterious Mexican male. He says that this male followed Candace into the woods, but he never thought anything about it. He simply thought Candace went home and that was it. The authorities would press even further, but he would maintain that story. Marche Hickman would describe in detail the details that he could remember about what the Hispanic looked like, and it wouldn't be long before they found a match. Turns out, there was a Mexican male who recently pled guilty to murder, and guess what? It was in the same area. The story seemed to have the same MO. It was a missing teen girl who was later found. But while this lead seemed promising, it wouldn't be long before they ruled that out. They knew 100% he wasn't the guy. Shortly after ruling out that suspect, they would come in contact with Jermaine Robinson, the other guy whose name was inside of Candace's diary. Jermaine Robinson would waste no time. When he's questioned about Candace, he immediately rolls over. He tells the authorities, I had nothing to do with it. It was all Marche. He describes seeing Marche put his arm around Candace's neck and applying pressure. Jermaine says that at that moment, he panics. He doesn't realize what his friend is doing. He says that Marche holds that pressure until she goes limp. He then tells the authorities that Marche even made him participate. Jermaine says that Marche told him that if he didn't, he would get the same treatment. Jermaine Robinson denies ever participating. The authorities then circle back to Marche Hickman. They go straight into the interrogation room and tell him, we got your DNA. We recovered it off of Candace. They would also let him know that your buddy Jermaine rolled over. He told us what happened, so you might as well tell us too. Feeling trapped, Marche would admit to what he did. He would tell the authorities word by word exactly what transpired, and his story would match Jermaine's. Marche would admit that he did see Candace on the evening of April 28th of 2010. He saw her cut behind the apartments and walk into the woods. Now, she was going to the woods because there was a trail. This trail was essentially a shortcut to her home. In this moment, Marche saw opportunity to get rid of his problem. Marche explains that after he saw Candace go into the woods, he followed after her. He then catches up with her, and he places his arm around her neck in a friendly manner. He then reveals to Candace that he heard that she was going around telling people what happened in the abandoned home. Candace would deny telling anyone. Marche had gotten word that she was telling someone because someone came and told him. In that moment that Candace denied it, he begins to apply pressure. After a certain amount of time passes, she's now unconscious and ultimately deceased. After he committed the act, he said he panicked. He ran back home, but then he returned the next day, and that's when he put the mattress over her. In the year of 2013, Marche Hickman would eventually plead guilty to the charges of murder. He would also be charged with attempting to violate her. For his role in this incident, he would receive life without the possibility of parole. As for Jermaine Robinson, he's never been charged in connection with her murder, but he was charged with the attempted violation. For his role in this incident, he would receive 15 years. The year is now 2026. Jermaine Robinson is a free man, while Marche Hickman has to live with what he's done. But was Marche Hickman truly alone in this act? Yes, he admitted it. He says that he was the only one responsible, but when he was questioned about a knife, he said he never had one. But the autopsy results didn't say that Candace died due to asphyxiation. She sustained a wound to the chest. And if Marche Hickman didn't deal that wound, then who did? I want to be clear. When Marche confessed, he said that he was the only one at the scene. He said that he was 100% responsible and Jermaine was never there. That is a direct contradiction to what Jermaine said. Jermaine said he was there when it happened. He saw it happen and he did nothing. But now all of a sudden, Marche is saying he was never there. It sounds more like he was taking the rap. He was covering up for his best friend, which leaves one major question. Who's responsible for the wound to her chest? At that point, Marche had already confessed. He had nothing to lose. He knew he was going to jail for life. So why lie about not having a knife? It makes no sense, which means that it's very possible that Jermaine Robinson didn't just stand there like he said, and that he participated. But that's no more than a theory. What do you guys think? What happened to 15-year-old Candace Parchment is completely unbearable. I know her mother lives in agony. It's a sad story all around. But to add insult to injury, I feel like this full story hasn't been told. There's definitely more to this subject, but we'll never know unless Marche Hickman or Jermaine Robinson decides to tell the truth themselves. Will that ever happen? I don't know. Only time will tell. Rest in peace, Candace Parchment. Thank you for being a light for others.